ultimately, all of this boils down to a spiritual battle. At the end of the day, like there's not going to be a political or policy solution that fixes what is wrong with our hearts. And so you can pray. You can pray when you're walking to class. You can pray when you're driving. You can pray when you're doing dishes. Like no one can stop you from doing that. And you can pray for anyone.
Hi, welcome to Wild and Beautiful. We're Joanna Hyatt and Lauren Enriquez, your co-hosts who every week are helping you live out your faith in a way that's biblically rooted but culturally relevant.
So what do you do? Do you have any habits, good or bad, that you do when you're really stressed out to cope?
This feels like a trap.
We didn't talk about this ahead of time, guys, so I don't know what she's going to say.
I feel like I'm in a constant state of stress. I don't know. Lately, my children I've just been feeling stressed. It's just nonstop talking in this house. Mm-hmm. Is that a thing with all boys?
Oh,
I mean, you have one girl.
Yes, 100%. You need silence,
like my
don't you?
Level.
You need to like quiet down and...
I just need for one person at a time to ask me questions.
Yeah,
I need for one person at a time.
Talking over each other is real.
And they all look at you like, I don't hear anyone else. Yes. I don't know why you're stressed, Mom.
Have you ever met, okay, we're going to get so far off topic, but have you ever met a couple that does that? I have a couple friends where the husband and wife talk at the same time. And I'm like, you guys know I only have one brain. Like I might have two ears, but I can only like process what one of you is saying. It's hilarious. It shows a really strong marriage because they're like both so excited about the thing they're sharing that they're just both talking at the same. But it feels like talking to my kids, except
someone's going to feel called out
like
right now.
4 of them. Yeah, right. Love you.
What do I do when I stress? It depends. If I'm good stressed, I like if I'm in a healthy place, I probably just take a beat. I like to work out on even I need to go for a run. If the weather's good, if I'm feeling good, if someone can cover my children.
Yeah.
So once in every 1,000 times that I'm stressed, I'll go for a run.
Do you put music on or is it silent? Do you need silence?
Probably silence.
Okay.
Journaling is good for me, but like in the moment, I'm going to stress eat. Let's be honest. Like I'm just going to eat. I'm going to probably blow off some steam and yell a little and then we're good. Okay. And then I just keep moving.
That works.
Yesterday, I just laid my head against the cabinet. My husband looked at me and goes, "Oh, I think mommy needs some quiet."
Yeah. My husband always thinks I need a hug when that happens. And I'm like, that's the last thing I want right now.
Do not.
Good intentions.
I actually stood there thinking, please no one touch me. Mm-hmm. Please no one come touch me right now.
If you guys haven't watched Bluey, it's a hilarious cartoon based out of Australia. But the latest season has this very true to life episode where the kids are just all over their mom and the dad walks in from like getting his hair cut and he's like, "I'm home." And she's like, "I'm leaving. I need a few minutes with nobody touching me." It's so relatable.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tend to vent. I either vent to my children, I vent to a friend, I vent to my husband. I because I'm so verbal, if I get it out, I feel less like the stress level goes down.
So you have some good coping mechanisms.
Is that good coping? Potato chips and talking? I don't know.
Yeah, it seems like it. I don't know if mine are as healthy. One of the main things I do is I go for a drive blasting really inappropriate music from my high school days. And from today, I still listen to new inappropriate music. Fun fact about me, my music taste is really inappropriate. And
it is actually, friends. Okay.
One of the songs that's not even like in my book, this is only like elementary level inappropriate. Cold Hard B by Jet. The word is actually used in the song. Spoiler alert. But I clicked on it.
So she listens to these songs without children in the car.
No, usually. I'll leave it at that. My kids have a very creative vocabulary. I had one of these songs on my laptop, and when I clicked on it, I canceled YouTube Premium recently, so now I get the ads and the ad that popped up. I sent it to Joanna because it was hilarious. It was an ad for mail order Slavic brides. Slavic. That's not a certain country, right? It's a region of countries.
I believe it encompasses a few. Like we have
Yeah.
a Slavic church here, which would be a combination of Russians and Ukrainians.
Okay. Yeah. See, that's what I thought. I went to college with
You're right.
a good friend from Slovakia, and then I've got friends from Russia and Ukraine. So I thought it was funny, first of all, that it wasn't Ukrainian mail order brides or Russian mail order brides, but it was like this whole category of Slavic ladies. That's how it was phrased.
Ladies.
Slavic ladies.
I'm amazed there was an advertisement for mail order brides. That feels very
Yeah. Well, they didn't call them that,
Not
but that's
allowed.
what it was.
Oh, of course not. Sorry.
And it was a 2.5 minute ad. And normally after 10 seconds, you can skip or 5 or whatever. But I was like engrossed in the whole thing. I sat there and watched that whole 2.5 minute ad of this beautiful blonde lady standing in front of the camera and explaining to potential purchasers in the US why Slavic ladies are preferable and why you should buy these mail order brides. Let me just say as a sidebar, that seems very dehumanizing to real Slavic ladies to me, but that's that's an aside.
Mhm.
But some of the things that the advertisement said about them were hilarious and said more about their target audience than about the ladies. So they are just more rational than American ladies. This is one of the ads.
I was about to be indignant and realize we are a little insane these days.
Beautiful bodies, of course. And that's true. Like these are beautiful people. More rational. And then they don't care about the age difference. So the entire population, apparently, of women who are Slavic don't care about the age difference. So I'm assuming they're targeting these ads at like
I'm
60
getting a little annoyed on behalf of these women.
Yeah. Yeah.
This feels so this is what happens when you de-stress. Is you get mail order bride advertisements.
Apparently so.
Because you're listening to a cold hard beat.
Mhm.
Great.
Yeah, it was
This is why I
weird.
stick with Backstreet Boys.
I don't know why they put that ad with that song, because any man looking for a mail order bride in the market, like a potential candidate for a mail order bride, that's probably not the type of song he's listening to. So I can't explain that one, but there you go. YouTube advertising for you.
What a week. We women, American women can't be a bit irrational though. I was, this week, I got to last minute testify. It sounds more impressive than it is. So our Washington legislature had a hearing and they were listening, having a hearing on an abortion bill.
Oh boy.
Mind you, there were 6 abortion bills being heard
Whoa.
at the same time.
And yeah, you
In
found out
multiple
about
committees.
this the night before?
I found out about this the night before. So I find out about this the night before from someone. Hey, did you know that tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., it's almost like they didn't want people to show up.
Almost.
Right? At 8 a.m., this committee is hearing this bill. And so what that basically means for those of you that maybe don't regularly find out where you can be a troublemaker is they were going to present the bill in terms of just like, hey, here's what the bill states. And then in this case, Governor Inslee for Washington was going to give a few words supporting it. The author of the bill, the one who sponsored it, was going to speak on it. And then anybody was allowed to give comment. So you could either be in person, which happens to be 4.5 hours away from me in our state's capital, or you could do it on Zoom. And so, we're like scrambling here to let people know that this is happening. And so the next morning I log in and I'm listening. And here's where the irrational part comes in, friends, okay? Because, of course, anytime I bring up abortion, I feel like ergo irrationality.
Yeah, how are we even debating this?
Yeah, so the governor's comments made me just high blood pressure. Here we go. But then this was the line that got me. The woman who is sponsoring this bill, she says at the end, we just want our children to have the same rights as today's women have.
Oh, okay.
And I'm going, oh, okay, but which right is that?
Yeah.
Like the right to decide
dead?
whether or not your child lives?
Yeah.
So you want your child that you might kill to have the same right to kill their own child only if their mother doesn't exercise that right. Make it make sense. Please make it make sense.
Gosh, I think that the abortion cabal must have gotten together and had some kind of a roundtable meeting, because last week Kamala Harris mourned whatever, the 50th anniversary of Roe v. Wade by quoting the Declaration of Independence on life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but she left out life. So she said that all women need to have, or pregnant people, whatever they call them now, need to have access to liberty and happiness, and just conveniently skipped over the right to life, which is purposely put in the front of that triplet. Because
turns out you don't have the other two.
Thank you. Gosh.
You ain't got nothing if you're dead, friends.
So you testified?
So I gave comment, and of course they're like, okay, due to the number of people, you have 90 seconds. Like 90 seconds.
Wow.
I can barely say my name and give my credibility in 90 seconds. And so I did the best that I could. I'm jamming through stuff. Inevitably, friends, I was the one person that they were like, okay, Mrs. Hyatt, you're going to need to end now. I was like, fine.
Okay.
But it just was very interesting to listen to the reasons that were being given. A lot of women, of course, were testifying. And, you know, the new term that I'm hearing is forced pregnancy. That came up a lot.
I love
forced
that
pregnancy.
That one's
forced
my
pregnancy.
favorite.
Right. And, okay, again, friends, setting aside rape and incest.
Rape is actually forced pregnancy.
It is a forced pregnancy. But I'm saying in those cases, your choice about sexual intercourse was taken from you.
Exactly.
In the 99% of the other cases, no one forced you to have sex.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what was also interesting to me. I'm like, oh, we're missing this little piece here.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about forced pregnancy, but it's really you who made a decision and are wanting to constantly act like there aren't actual natural outcomes to these decisions.
Well, you're
making.
Not only that, but you're a victim of your decision making, because you're being forced to be pregnant, not by your decision to engage in sex, but by the law, which says you can't kill your child. That's what's forcing you, is a law prohibiting you from killing the child that in more than 99% of cases you conceived consensually. It's wild.
Not rational.
No.
Not rational.
Forced birth was
American
another
women
one that used to be popular. Forced birth. But the reality is, like, every child is born some way or another.
It is a forced birth, and that you do have to go through delivery as much as you love pregnancy. I've been reminded of that. I'm like, oh, shoot, this child has to come out.
Has to come out. Oh, gosh.
Yeah, so I used the words forced abortion. I said, well, how are you going to ensure that no woman undergoes a forced abortion?
Joe, that's good.
Because we know, thanks to you, Enriquez, we know that a lot of women, a lot of women don't actually want to have an abortion, but they feel like they have no choice.
Right.
But also, we know repeatedly that these abortion facilities, particularly Planned Parenthood, covers up for abusers.
Oh, yeah.
And so
Helps them.
you have minors being brought in. Yeah. So I'm like, that's a forced abortion, friends.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't like that. That's probably why they cut me off, because I reminded them that in Washington State, there was a guy who raped his daughter multiple times. And over the course of 7 years, she became pregnant 3 times and had forced abortions at Planned Parenthood. That Planned Parenthood intentionally did not report. So that's probably why they cut me off. I was like, P.S., y'all are the worst.
So bad.
Anyway, so just talking about like irrational women I get how we have this reputation that we're kind of this hysterical crowd that just screams, you know, my body, my choice. Let me kill my child. It's just really unfortunate because that's not true to who most women are, actually.
Yeah.
American or otherwise.
Well, and it's not just the women. I mean, most of the enthusiasm for abortion was really seeded by men. Women took the banner and ran with it, but it was Larry Lader and Bernard Nathanson and really men who wanted to profit off of abortion and not have any consequences from sex that instigated this whole thing. And then women were duped into thinking that sounded great, and it has not turned out well. I do have a question for you, kind of a sidebar, but related to this. So after you testified, you were kind of filling me in on how it had gone, and you said that you were shaking when it finished. And exactly. So, okay, in my mind, I always thought people like you just enjoyed this process of being on the hot seat. And because you so willingly sign up to do these things. I remember when we were both working at another place, you willingly signed up to give a testimony in Spanish over Zoom in support of a pro-life law or against a pro-abortion law. And I just thought to myself, wait, it's the whole reason I stay away from these things, even when people ask me to do them, is because I walk away shaking and uncomfortable. Like, I don't like that feeling. But for you,
plot
that
twist.
Didn't stop
So
you.
do me. Do I.
So I need to understand, like, why do you look forward to doing this stuff knowing that you're going to be so anxious?
So here's the funny thing. So I was at my mom's house so that she could kind of keep an eye on the children, who, of course, decided to start yelling the minute I started speaking. But sidebar, I was like, oh, I have kids.
Well,
Yes,
those
there's
were
my
your
qualification.
credentials talking. Exactly.
That's what I felt like. But I had my notes laid out. I'm waiting to go on. And I told her, I was like, oh, I love this. She goes, what? I was like, I mean, I hate it and I love it. Like, I love doing this, even as it makes me incredibly like nervous. Like there's like this adrenaline of like, oh, this is tense. And I might not say it totally right. And then they're going to hate me. Half that room is going to hate me. Half the people on Zoom are going to hate me. And yet there's a part of me that's like, but here we go for battle.
Oh my gosh. So it's like this thing where they say to view your nervousness as excitement. It's like a way of tricking your brain. Is that what you do? Like, It doesn't work for me.
Probably. It's like public speaking is my most favorite thing to do in the world.
And she's really
I would do
good
it for
at
free.
it.
I would pay you. I would pay you to let me public speak. I love it. That second before I walk on stage, I am like sick to my stomach. Pit, this is going to be so bad.
Yeah. I would never.
And then I go out there and we go.
That's amazing. I want to learn from people like you.
So I
don't
maybe the
understand.
shaking is like the adrenaline come down a little bit, right? Because you're just like here we go. But also, yeah, I mean, listen, I anytime I do this stuff, I think maybe it's human nature. I want people to like me. Let's just be honest.
We all do. I don't care if you say you don't care if people like you. Yes, you do.
So like, even though I'm in a controversial thing and I know what I'm saying is right, I really wish y'all would like me and you would just understand the reason. It's like, we knock, who was it? Sally Field, who was like, you love me. You really love me when she got her Oscar. You like me. You really like me. I'm not that bad. But there is a sense of like, I don't love the idea of people being like, she's the worst. I hate her.
That's
like,
hilarious.
No, let me explain to you why. But what's interesting is I got off that call and my husband and I were talking about the fact that in that room, and it was very evident, even though like our governor was trying so hard to be like, this is all about respect. I'm like, you despise people like me.
Yeah.
I can just tell. Just the comments that are made, you don't even say like, I bet she's a great person and I just don't yet understand her position. It's, I am evil. I, who am advocating for life and for children. You and I are evil, Enriquez, because somehow we got to this place where the emperor has no clothes and we're the ones calling it out, and that's problematic.
Yeah.
So it's just very interesting to walk out and be like, I know that I'm actually not liked for what I just did. And yet I can't be quiet. Like I sent my girls to school and they knew what I was doing. I said, pray for mommy. She's going to do this. And then they're like, okay, that's great. Because how do we raise our kids to be brave if we don't first model that?
Yeah.
Even if we're totally terrified.
Well, it's so convicting to me when I see you go out. I've seen you talk to school boards. I've seen you testify. I've seen you do public speaking. And it's like, that's all the things we're telling people to do all the time. Like, you gotta speak the truth no matter how hard it is. And I'm over here like cowering in the corner, like, please don't ask me to stand at a podium and do a single thing. My nose itches when I'm nervous, which is like the weirdest.
So like a little bunny rabbit?
Yeah, but I'm like, I don't know what it is. Anyways, I just have weird side effects. And I think if I do it more and practice more, I think it's one of those things that becomes easier. That's how writing and getting published is. Like the more you get published, the less nervous it makes you each time people are reading your stuff. So it's a discipline question, I think, which ties into a book I'm reading that I wanted to talk about today.
Oh, good. What are you reading?
Okay.
Talk to me.
So I'm reading this book called Discipline is Destiny. I'm not reading it. I'm listening to it on Audible. What are your thoughts? Does that count as reading, people? I think it does.
1,000%, friends.
Yeah.
It counts as reading.
I think it does. When it comes to self-improvement type books, always Audible for me. I don't know what it is about Audible, but I can digest them so well when I listen to them. But fiction, I have to read an actual book. My brain can't follow it on audio. So that's how I separate whether I do audio or a real book is fiction or nonfiction. But anyways, Discipline is Destiny is written by Ryan Holiday, who used to be like a brand guru at American Apparel. He got his start, I think he dropped out of college and got his start very successfully and at a very young age. So he was like in his early 20s when he was running the American Apparel brand, which if you don't know is this very edgy American clothing brand. That has been referenced in certain pop songs and like just has a reputation for doing these very kind of like shocking PR campaigns to get attention and sell their clothes. So he was kind of behind.
Isn't it right up there with like Abercrombie?
Kind of, yeah. But they've done, I'm not even going to say some of the marketing campaigns that they've done, but they've put like mannequins.
They're right up there with your song choices. Let's just put it that way.
They've put mannequins in the window that you're like, what are you selling? But anyways, he was very successful at PR, and he was in PR at this young age when the blogosphere was coming up. So he wrote this book called Trust Me, I'm Lying, which formed everything I know about working in the media. It's one of those books that someone told me early in my career, like, you need to read this book. It'll answer everything. So if you want to know how the media and media manipulation works, Trust Me, I'm Lying is great. I've listened to it several times. Ryan, I know he's never going to listen to this. He has like a very nasally voice that's like also very endearing. So I actually love listening. He reads his own books on Audible, so I always listen to him on Audible. Anyway, at some point in this career, he became a Stoic. So somebody who believes in discipline and humility, reading the ancient Roman philosophers, Seneca especially, like what do these people believe about how to live life pre-Christ or contemporaneous? Most of it was pre-Christian. I think most of the Stoics are in, I don't know,
so they're not Christians.
BC. No, they're not Christians. I think Stoics today are basically believers that are too cool to like acknowledge that God exists. Because the stuff they believe, it totally translated into Christianity.
Interesting.
These people were totally predisposed to follow Christ when he came onto the scene, because these were people saying like, you know, the beginning of wisdom is acknowledging that you know nothing, and humility is the key to leadership. And really, they were kind of laying the ground for a lot of the things that Christianity came and popularized. But anyway, I think his most popular book on Stoicism is The Daily Stoic. I think it's like Daily Meditations. I haven't read that one. But this one, Discipline is Destiny, Ryan's a really good storyteller. And so whereas there are a lot of books about discipline and like getting things done that are, here's the data and here's how your brain works and here's the neurological pathway that you have to overcome to like overcome yourself, he instead kind of uses stories. Here's the story of Lou Gehrig, a baseball player, and how he practiced discipline and how it was so different from Babe Ruth. And he really goes into this extensively. And I wanted to recommend it to the listeners. It's not a Christian book, obviously, but it's something that's been having a really positive impact on me and helping me to kind of reset. As you know, Joe and I are both getting ready for babies to come. I have fallen into some old bad habits of like scrolling through social media, staying up too late, not getting up early, just things that I used to be good at. And the whole point of discipline is to consistently do the right thing, not do it sporadically. So this has been
discipline is exhausting. Let's be honest.
It is. It can be, especially because you fall off.
It's good for you though.
You fall off for one day, and then it's really hard to get back on that next day because now you're in the sleep deprivation, or you've undone your dopamine discipline or whatever, and it's that next day of getting back on that's like, oh, this is so hard. But yeah.
I mean, when you put it that way, it sounds like discipline is in a lot of ways breaking addictions. Yeah. And we don't think about, most of us, I probably don't think about, where am I addicted?
Mm-hmm. Oh, totally.
But we have them.
Yes.
I mean, social media is such an easy punching bag, but it does. Mm-hmm. It provides that dopamine hit. It is addictive. And it's all around. And I think it's easier to say like, oh, you have an alcohol problem. You have a pornography problem.
Yeah.
You have an addiction. But really, you're right.
Scrolling
Anything that
through.
like derails us
Yeah.
from becoming what we know we should be pursuing.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Good point.
something I've been thinking about with addiction, I think discipline, self-control, I kind of think they're interchangeable words, but I've been thinking a lot about how you'll see all these like YouTube gurus and self-help people that are like, you just have to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and it's within you. And there is an element to where, personal responsibility is a key to discipline. But I think when we acknowledge the addiction aspect and overcoming addictions, you can't do it without others. I would say you can't do it without God. But the accountability portion, or just the part where someone stepped in and said the thing you needed to hear or acknowledged your humanity when you were at your lowest, we like to think that we're overcoming these very big difficulties and addictions on our own, but we're not. If you really look back over your story, no matter what it is, someone was there to help. I was just re-listening to Shia LeBeouf's interview with, his
John
name.
Bernthal?
Thank you. I can never remember this guy's name. It's so
From The
good.
Walking Dead, my friends, among other things.
Yeah.
John's great. John's great.
It's such a good interview. If you haven't listened to it, it's on John's channel. It's like several hours long, but Shia LeBeouf hit rock bottom, like where he was at a table with a loaded gun before someone stepped in and said something that got him onto the right path. And there were a couple more people that didn't abandon him when everyone else did. He said not even his mom was talking to him. He said he didn't have any wiggle room. This was the first time in his life that he didn't have anyone to turn to. And it was really only by the grace of God that someone intervened. He didn't have someone to go to, but someone inserted themselves and was like, I'm not going to give up on you. That he was able to make this recovery. And he's now dedicated his life, he says in the show, to give dudes who F up hope. And I'm like, what more can you ask for out of your life than to like hit rock bottom and then say, I'm not going to go around giving TED Talks about how great I am that I overcame it. I'm going to give people hope because I know what it's like to be in that position. That's just such a humble approach. Anyway.
But he's not giving empty hope either.
No.
Like he's giving hope that is rooted ultimately in Christ. That interview, my husband loved it and sent it to like all his guy friends, by the way. So if you are listening, you're like, I want a way to, that's a great interview. In terms of just watching two men have a very honest, raw conversation that so rarely happens. I think that's what my husband found so refreshing is he said, oh yeah, guys are like, we're thinking about and struggling with this stuff, but nobody's saying it out loud. And just good reminder too, like the people around you are often struggling with something. What's that meme that's like, it's real sap happy, like be kind.
You never know what they're going
is
through.
Fighting a battle or something. But it's true. I mean, some feel more dramatic than others, but I think if we were all to be honest, I mean, we all have stuff that's like simmering under the surface. You and I were just talking about before we got on here of like, okay, actually this is coming out of this. You're like, oh, there it is. Got it. Okay. I can work with that actually.
Yeah.
But that kind of raw honesty to what we were talking about last week, it's scary to do it publicly. And we're not even really good at doing privately.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why the Catholic Church is all about confession, because you're doing it privately, but there's a screen and you're not really making eye contact with anybody.
Yeah. And the priest will get excommunicated if he tells anyone what you said, which is great.
Perfect.
It's kind of like the therapist that will lose their license if they share what you said. But the vulnerability point is so true, especially between men. I mean, I have a hard time with this. I have like a manly personality, but the vulnerability thing is hard. And John did say that before he had Shia on, like everyone was telling him not to do it. They were like, do not, like this guy is a pariah. You're going to like, it's going to be bad for your show. Agents were calling him like, don't do it. And he was just like, but Shia is my friend. And like at the end of the day, that is literally all it came down to for John was he's my friend. Like he said he thought about kind of disowning him because what Shia was accused of doing was really bad. But he's like, at the end of the day, like this guy is my friend. And that's all there is to it. And I thought that was really moving. And I'm glad they did it because I feel like it gave a lot of people permission to be vulnerable in their own way. I feel like that's something you and I try to do with this show. Like we put our opinion out there knowing that maybe we're going to get corrected or maybe there's going to be a better argument for the other side. But we want to give people the courage to say things, not just privately, but publicly, and have the courage to do that. And I hope that it will get more normalized.
Well, and I know that there were people praying for Shia. I mean, he did a movie with my old boss, who's a Christian producer. And to bring it full circle to this woman in the Washington legislature who made this ridiculous comment, it's a good reminder, like, we should always be praying for people. Yeah. Just because we don't have a relationship with them doesn't mean that the Holy Spirit can't pursue them and that God doesn't equally care for them. You know, there's a whole ministry in the industry, a Hollywood Prayer Network, that's committed to trying to pair up people to pray for someone. You don't have to know them, but realizing like everybody actually needs to be prayed for. I love once my dad said, he goes, you know, I can't go into the boardroom of organizations, but I can pray and the Holy Spirit can enter that space. Boardrooms where I'm not welcome. And I often think about that with Planned Parenthood. I'm like, you and I are never going to be allowed into the boardroom of Planned Parenthood to say, we'd like to present our case to you. And yet I can be praying that God is moving the hearts of those board members and he is disrupting those meetings and he is causing chaos that ultimately leads to light. Like we underestimate, I mean, we could do a whole episode on prayer.
It's a good point.
It's kind of like, who's your target today? Who has God put on your heart to pray for? And yes, you know, we just saw that woman in London. Was it London or just somewhere in England who was being questioned or arrested because she was praying outside an abortion facility?
In her mind.
You know, so they
asked her.
She wasn't praying out loud.
The only reason the cops knew she was praying is because they asked her if she was praying in her mind. And she said yes. And she was arrested for that. Because if she had been standing where she was, but thinking about her grocery list, she wouldn't have been arrested. Isn't that wild?
And so I was going to say, nobody can stop you from praying. And it's true, they can't. And yet there's a day that is here, actually, not even coming, here, where you might be arrested for that. And yet, like, if I have friends who I know are not believers and they think praying is a joke or a waste of time, they can't stop me from praying. I believe the opposite of them. And so I know people have been praying for Shia, and we have to continue to pray for people like him, because I can guarantee you when someone makes such a public statement, the enemy hates it. Yeah. He would much rather, like, first of all, that Shia never comes to know Christ. Second, he would love that if he comes to know Christ, just stay quiet. He would have loved for John to not have given him that platform. And yet that 2-hour podcast has been transformative for a lot of people.
Because Shia did come to know Christ, and he's talking about it from the mountaintops. And I thought to myself this morning when I was re-listening to that episode, I thought, you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if in 2 or 3 months I'm listening to Shia renounce his Christianity or, you know, be back at a rock bottom of some kind. Not because I don't think he has made an incredible turnaround and that he is saying yes to grace, but because I know that because he's such a public figure, all the more is the enemy going to be going after him and trying to cripple that and shut it down. Because who knows how many lives it's transformed now. I love your point about prayer and sending it into the boardrooms too. That's a good practice. There's your challenge, friends, this week. You don't have to get up in front of a school board. You don't have to give public comment like I did. But you can pray. And I'm always being challenged in my belief of, do I believe that prayer is our most powerful weapon? Because it can feel like, oh, getting on a Zoom call, spouting off for 90 seconds is the most powerful thing. But it's not. It's important, but it's not the most powerful thing. Ultimately, all of this boils down to a spiritual battle. At the end of the day, like there's not going to be a political or policy solution that fixes what is wrong with our hearts. And so you can pray. You can pray when you're walking to class. You can pray when you're driving. You can pray when you're doing dishes. Like, no one can stop you from doing that. And you can pray for anyone, which is kind of fun. Amen. I love that.
On that note, friends, please like and share this podcast and let us know if there's something that we can be praying for you. We don't have to know you to be able to pray for you. Wildandbeautifulpodcast@gmail.com.